these words, I welcome Ambassador Chinoy to speak to the group present. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Arvind, for those very flattering words. I actually think this event is about you today, not about me. But a very warm welcome to each one of you on behalf of the Embassy of India in Japan. And you've come at a very appropriate moment, the moment that the Somei Yoshino Sakura are still in some degree of blossom. You are lucky because these flowers are very ephemeral and they tend to be around for a very few days. It takes only one night of rain and some severe gusts of wind to blow them away. And that is how the Japanese see the beauty of the sakura. That you appreciate the beauty of the flower, its presence, and the joy that it gives you while it lasts. Now, this is also a very good time for all of you to come, and I want to extend a very warm welcome to the YPO of Mumbai. I'm also told that there are 10 couples from Rajasthan. You're all very welcome here. Mumbai, as you all know, has a sister city relationship with Yokohama, and the state of Maharashtra has a sister state relationship with Wakayama. In addition, the state of Rajasthan has a sister state relationship with Aichi. But this is only indicative of the kind of integration and connectivity that we have today between India and Japan. I was going through your website to learn a little more about the Young Presidents Organization, and 3 points struck me. One, that this is the creme de la creme of Indian entrepreneurship and business, and that you're all expected to be very young. And of course, it's been described as youthful until you get to the age of 45. I believe that's the cutoff point. It's good to know that you consider 45-year-olds also to be youthful. But it's important that that this is a young crowd from India, because you represent the young India that we have today, the 600 million people below the age of 25, and all these millions of youth in India that we increasingly regard as our asset. The asset that Prime Minister Modi has often spoken of, that we are growing at a time when we have rich natural resources and plentiful human resources. I recall Goldman Sachs, when they were referring to the BRICS countries, had also kind of assessed that it is only India, of all the originally BRIC, now BRICS since 2009, of all the BRIC or BRICS countries, it's only India that's best placed to achieve 5% or higher rates of growth all the way up to 2050, primarily because of our rich human resources. So welcome the rich human resources of India, the youthful ones. The second point that struck me was that you are devoted to learning. And I think this is a very important point. No matter what religion, what part of the world you come from, learning is very important. There is, as you all know, a rich body of literature in Sanskrit also that speaks of the importance of learning. And I'll recite to you one such, which is Vidya, which is learning. Vidya dadhati vinayam. Vinaya adhyati patratam. Patravad dhanamapnoti dhanadharma tataha sukham. The meaning, and this is particularly relevant because you are perhaps representing industrialists and business houses from all over India, that the acquisition of learning is a knowledge, and vidya creates humility, and humility builds a good character. And when you have a good character, you're better placed to succeed in society in the occupation or pursuit of the creation of wealth, for instance. And when you do that with a good character, with humility, to boot, you're better placed then to use that wealth also for the progress of society. So it's very important that this message is imbibed by all of us at an early age. Vidya dhadati vinayam, vinaya adhyati patratam. You get these catch words here. Vinayam, humility, patratam, character. Vidya dhadati vinayam, vinaya adhyati patratam, patravat dhanam apnoti. Dhan apnoti. Dhana dharma tatah sukham. And you use that for social good. This is of course integral to much that is happening across corporate India today, that you not only grow, you not only pursue the creation of wealth, assets, your business, but you also do something, give back by way of social responsibility. And now what was the third thing that struck me? The third thing that struck me was your emphasis on connectivity with the rest of the world in a genuine manner, or something to that effect. And there is no escaping that today, as you all know, ladies and gentlemen, that we live in a globalized world where it's a world that has virtually imploded over the past 30, 40 years. Not just because the 20th century created the means of communication and interaction which took us across oceans and mountains in a matter of a few hours by air travel, but in the last 30 years we've seen the onset of a much more impactful digital age in which the world has simply become a global village. That we lead part of our lives in reality and part in virtual reality. And we are able to, in this digital age, connect much more than in the past. The previous generations never had this kind of connectivity. So it's vital that in this digital age, when some might say that passwords are more important than passports, that we fine-tune this art of connectivity, learn to speak a global language, learn to understand each other in a cross-cultural context. And I think that's very, very useful, especially for the youth of India like you, to therefore come out to Japan and learn a bit about Japan as well. Now the broad context that I see before me, and many of you may already know much more than I do about this, is that the global economic situation is once again beset with certain complexities. Over the last 30-35 years, we saw the unbridled rise of China, its growth at 9.5%, 10%, double digit for long periods. But that phase has unfortunately, for a number of countries, not just for China, come to an end. If you look at China's growth, the PRC, the first 30 years between 1949 and 1978 was marked by monumental mistakes. The Cultural Revolution, the Great Leap Forward, etc. If you look at the next 30 years between 1978 and say roughly 2008, you find that the Chinese did splendidly. They made some really good decisions, always got the sweet spot when they wanted to bring in FDI, globalize, build supply chains, etc. But I think China has now entered a phase where there will be prolonged headwinds and a downturn which is here to stay for some time. Much greater unpredictability. It is in this context that we find that there is a simultaneous rise of a number of other alternatives. And as you all know, India is now the fastest growing economy at 7.5%. Imagine the growth rates that might be possible once we get all our reforms in place, when we get all the policy decisions actually implemented. So the sky's the limit as far as India is concerned. But between China, Japan and India, along that entire swathe of geography in the Indo-Pacific, there are a number of countries that are doing quite well. Asia, as you all know, is home to 60% of the global population. And for prolonged periods, this 60% of the global population has been exposed to steadily 6% or more higher growth rates. And within this Asian landmass, it was not just China, but increasingly now countries like India that are on the rise. A number of others have been showing great promise between China and India in Southeast Asia as well. And in this context, it is India, and India alone, that offers something that nobody else does. What Prime Ministers often described as the D of a very large demand, a domestic market, which is something also that might have inured us to the adverse effects of the global financial and economic crises in the past. We were at that point of time not half as globalized as we are today, and we did not feel the full impact, also because we didn't have the same kind of supply chains and an export-oriented economy as we might look to do now. And we have the D of demography as the demographic dividend which Prime Minister Modi keeps talking about. You represent that rich demographic dividend as well. And then you have the D of democracy. And when you look to all the competition between Japan and India, that swathe of geography which is vying for the same FDI, the same capital, the same technology, the same fungible things that make the global economy go around, they may offer it in niche areas, but they cannot offer the scale that India offers today. So ours is, in fact, an economy that is on the cusp of much bigger things to happen. And in that context, I think it is vital that you look at what we are doing with Japan today. Japan, as you all know, remains the world's second largest developed economy. Not the second largest economy per se, for it has long been overtaken by the Chinese juggernaut. But Japan has things that nobody else can boast of, not even China. It has excellent technologies, very high skills and innovative capacities, and above all, very deep pockets. Just the pension funds and the banks and the companies in Japan to put together something in the region of 3, 4, 5 trillion US dollars. And this is very different from capital available elsewhere, for it is cheap capital. It has virtually no returns in the Japanese economy. And it is at this juncture that Japan is looking at alternatives to stimulate its own growth, to look at ways and means to growth, and that long-drawn dependence they had on China is no longer a very attractive option. They've looked at the past 30 years of their presence in China, their investments. They, along with the United States, contributed in good measure to the rise of China. But today, China is no longer as attractive as it was. Even if it continues to be attractive, it is not good risk mitigation strategy for any company, including in Japan, not to be part of the Indian landscape. And which is why Japan is showing great interest today in India. Cumulative investments from Japan into India since 2000 have now touched US dollars 19 billion. If you look at the last year or two, you find that Japan is now investing more than 2 billion US dollars annually in India. And that annual figure, not cumulative, annual figure is more than what Japan is investing into China by way of fresh FDI from here. That swing, in my view, therefore, has taken place. Hopefully it is here to stay. Hopefully the presence of an ever-growing number of Japanese companies in India, now close to 2,000, will encourage others to go. We hope to get much more of Japan to participate in a number of our flagship programs, in our Make in India program. There, by the way, it's been fairly successful so far. There are some good examples of Japanese companies that are much bigger in India than they are in Japan. For instance, Suzuki. And they have most recently also launched their first made in India Suzuki car, 100% made in India car, the Baleno, in Japan. I was privileged to be with Osamu Suzuki-san, and we launched it together at a very good function in Tokyo, which received very good international publicity as well, which is good news for our Make in India program. Apart from that, we would like to get them into our e-commerce and our startups. We would like them to come into smart cities, infrastructure, clean India, all sorts of things. I'm happy to inform you that for the financial year ending the 31st of March, Japan and India signed an agreement, a loan agreement of JICA loans worth 390 billion yen. And that is the largest ever that Japan has signed with India. You are also aware that today India is the largest recipient of Japanese ODA. These are the soft loans that come from Japan. And one of those is primarily for the next financial year going to be for the Shinkansen project in India. The Shinkansen project itself, and this is the first time that this bullet train project is moving out of Japan. If we discount that small track that exists in Taiwan, then this is a project which will be worth 18 billion US dollars, of which roughly 80% will be soft loans from Japan. What is even more important is that the Shinkansen between Mumbai and Ahmedabad is likely to spawn a great deal of other industry along the way. There will be an entire environment that will come up as a result of the Shinkansen going into India. And this will be in the nature of demand for special types of steel, products, electronics. You can imagine it's not possible for Japan to do all its procurements from Japan. And if they do that, it may not be as competitive because India has lower costs of labor. We have a fair bit of capacities available both in the private and the public sector. Government of India is offering a number of our very good and prime assets by way of disinvestment in steel, power, oil and gas, and so on and so forth. So we are going to see a new spring, therefore, in our bilateral relations as a result of the Shinkansen coming in. At the political level, it will suffice to say that our two Prime Ministers have an excellent relationship, Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Abe, one that is defined and characterized by mutual regard, respect. We have seen a groundswell of support and goodwill and regard across Japan for India. For our ties are based on ancient civilizational heritage, the Hindu-Buddhist body of thought, philosophy, values, and these shared values resonate in the contemporary period in both countries as well. And we have likewise seen that there is consensus across the political spectrum and in Indian society at large on developing closer relations with Japan. Prime Minister Modi, as you know, has often said that no country has played a more relevant role, a more defining role than has Japan in terms of the modernization of India in the past. And nor will any country play a more relevant role in India realizing and achieving its aspirations in the future, as will Japan. Prime Minister Abe has also said often that ours is a relationship with the greatest potential of all. So when we look at this relationship of ours, it is trouble-free, it is based on mutual respect, it is based on a consensus in both countries on developing relations, it's based on the solid foundation of a historical past and the values that we share. It's also based on practical realities. For India today needs Japanese capital, Japanese technology in order to leapfrog its way through various stages of economic development. Likewise, Japan needs India as a landscape or, so to speak, hinterland for manufacturing, for becoming globally competitive, for increasing its own exports, not just to the rest of the world, but also bringing competitively produced products back into Japan. And at the end of the day, to get some returns on the monumental sums of capital that Japan has at disposal. We are both committed to maintaining peace, security, and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region, for we are democracies. We stand for openness, transparency, peaceful resolution of disputes. We are against any kind of unilateralism in international affairs or any attempts to use force to alter status quo. And these are relevant things that bind India and Japan together. And so on this note, I'd like to once again extend my warmest greetings to each one of you. Welcome to the Indian Embassy. Please consider this as your own. When you go back, please do not hesitate to contact us in case you wish to exchange ideas on how we might promote our economic ties between India and Japan. Thank you all very much.
No problem. Please, anytime.
Yeah, because you'll do it.